Okay. So, yeah, welcome again to the final. It's kind of a sorrow moment for everyone, but yeah, it has to be done. So, closing and awards today. Yes, thanks, Lucas. But just wanted to go back in time, the summary of how it all went through. We started with Simon coming up with this idea of having the wow shopping app as an example. I think from my point of view, I was like, oh my God, we're taking up a huge, huge crop here by kicking something off, a full-blown design of a shopping app. I think it had, at least had 20 screens in there. But there was some persistence from Simon saying, no, we will be doing this time.
And the
So,
story behind, like a Sumit, the story, like I just want to mention here, like a first day, like a Simon is saying that, okay, this design we can going to select it, and like after 2 hours, he has built whole application. Like I was not there on that call, and when I came back, I see, oh, everything is ready. So this is a magic.
yeah, no, I think that was where it was like, it was almost a week or two before this Devcamp. And when Simon sits, he sits for some time. So, so just like me and him, we were just talking and working through that. And then it happened. And it's like, wow, okay, we have something to go about. Uh, So the first session, again, I took some, so all the videos are shared with you guys. I kind of did a fast forward, run through myself to catch up on stuff. A lot of people have not, or may not have gone through each one of them, but there's so much goodness in there where Marcos was talking about, why do we need it? Like, when you need the state moving from one widget to another and so on. So then I think I enjoyed the session from Felix, where he showed the architecture, why it was needed, what was the thought process behind doing block. Lots of long conversation with Thomas twice. Yeah, so the session and the Q&A. Yeah, so twice, and he talked about the command stuff, which was one of the highlights which I picked up from that session. A beautiful session from Shri. I think what I liked about that one was it actually went very calmly, slowly, concept by concept. I think sometimes I felt like that was needed, like going back and what is the state and so and giving those examples where he was back in time. So a very I would say teaching style from Sri was very good. I actually picked up this funny instance in the video from Remy. He's there and like, why did you take this? Yeah, but but this is the place where he was talking about the issues with providers. Yeah, so I said, okay, yeah, people talk about using the package and everything else, but also highlight what are the issues and what we did. So a good Q&A, 40 minutes. You can always go back and check that from him. And then I think although we had that last session from Simon, but we had hours and hours. So I could say thank you, Simon, for putting in so much hours, even not just in the boot camp, but also in your hump day. And you just continued working on the Wow Shopping app.
There's still more to do. There's still more to do.
Still more to do, and also you picked up on. So every time you not only are thinking of the app itself, but what in Flutter. Yeah, what are the alternatives we can do within Flutter, not just building a button and then done. Yep. So good stuff. So I again picked up this instance from that video. He was talking about in a quick example, and then he says, I'm not going to commit this because I do not like, it says that, because I do not like the way I want this app to work. So an interesting thing where he's like, oh, yeah, this is how you can do it, but I didn't like it. I'm not going to commit this. So yeah, still a lot to do, but a good example for people always fall back to this. The Wow Shopping app is on GitHub, and then just go and check it out. So and then being a part of this Devcamp, I think you have exclusive access to these videos. So definitely go back and check it out. It was fun to do a quick one for myself. So some of the mentors are here, some of them are not. But again, huge thank you to everyone to be a part of this. It's difficult. It's sometimes weekends.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, Thomas.
Thomas
Yeah,
is here.
Thomas is here. Yeah. So Thomas, thank you, and yeah, everyone else, thank you for doing it. And I feel like I can see from the reactions coming through. Also, everyone is saying thank you for doing this for us. So the moment, yeah, this is the moment. Congratulations to our graduates. Thanks for putting up the works. So again, this is from the app which I was building for attendance. I kind of massaged it a bit more. I am always excited to add country or where you guys are from to see the reach where we went through. Yeah. So so yeah, I can see people from India, Bangladesh, Brazil, Pakistan. So amazing. Yeah, like the reach that we have. So congratulations, you guys. Your certificates will be on the folder. Yeah, push it on LinkedIn. Tag everyone so we can always appreciate the work you have done. You can see. So I had like a very interesting formula. I went into deep first to actually think about how we should give people certificates. So the formula is the more sessions you attended, plus the Q&As that you had, plus the engagements that you had, yeah, plus the socials that you did, yeah. So if you are, so if you may not have joined all the sessions, but you were active on socials, so which means you learned something. You were hearing, what we were trying to convey here with the lessons. But so these are not the only ones who are graduated. We also have some superheroes, kind of renamed superheroes to something different this time. We have some campers who have been staying with us throughout the journey and also finished the assignments, etc., etc. Yeah, so congratulations to the campers. You attended almost every session, and also again put a lot of effort either on finishing up the assignments or creating those GitHub links that I saw. I think the minimum ask was basically just fork it and do something. Yeah, just add a package. So yes, Subramanian is like, I have attended all the sessions and I've thought yeah. So I was like, okay, what should I name them? So you guys have been camping with Simon throughout the session. Yeah, so congratulations to both of you guys. So both the parties. There are around 30 people who graduated. So if I do the math, I think we had 150 applicants. We selected nearly 100 of them. Yeah, and then throughout the journey, so initially I was actually planning to create a graph. So initially we had around 79 on the first two sessions. Yeah. And then we started getting, like, I know we know that people don't have time and so, but now you're part of the camp, which means all the videos and the materials are accessible to you. So if you have not, do it in your time and yeah, learn more about the state management stuff. There's so much goodness in there. Cool. All right. So that's me talking, and that's more or less it. So congratulations, guys. And I think I was actually thinking to bring in that nice quotes from everyone. So, but I think it would be too much of a praise. I thought, everyone has been saying this was amazing. Do it again. So it's like, okay.
Someone is asking, like sending us email that, are we going to do something for the beginners? Yeah, we
Yes.
take that comment and we will thinking about that. So watch this space. We will bring something for you as well who are beginners and who wants to learn Flutter from all the experts. Definitely we will bring something for you as well. So we are here to help you, everyone. So
Yeah. And what I would also say is basically the campers or the people. I know we have a couple of them over here in this on these ones who have joined the previous sessions of as beginners. If you want, you could be also mentors now. So if you want to start a small cohort of people in your region or even here, just ping us and then we can kick off another camp. Yeah.
yeah.
I was thinking I could stick around and do some more live coding on the WoW shopping app. Why not?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Q&A, guys, if you can unmute yourself, we can do a Q&A. And
yeah, we can do a last final session if anyone's got any questions about anything. I'll put a poll up there. Hopefully, does that come out? I don't know if that comes in the chat or what.
And we have the rest of the mentors with us also. So yeah, anything that you thought you did not ask.
This is a chance, right? This is a
yeah.
chance you can ask everyone. Like Thomas is here, Remy, Shri, and Simon is here as well. So it's a good chance to ask the question.
And you can be personal, like, you can ask them what are they working on right now.
Doesn't mean we have to answer.
So yeah.
Good.
So is Remy or Thomas or Shri who would like to say anything about this, like a kind of feedback for us? If you want to share your thoughts, feel free to do that. We're happy to.
Yes, I really enjoyed my session, and especially I was really glad that some more people got to know my approach, as it's currently still a little bit difficult to that people at least start trying it, because the big players on the field are always the ones that get recommended. So I was really happy to have the opportunity to get a little bit more exposure there.
I think everyone also enjoyed again the patterns. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that conversation was good. Like, what patterns do you use? So
Maybe. Yeah, if you compare the numbers, I'm still number 3. and Randall always tells everybody they should use Riverport. So
yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, get it always come back in discussions. It's a very big one.
yeah, it's true.
Hmm.
But it's really, especially now, I think it's really worth also to have a look at Flutter commands, because they are really offer a unique approach to several several aspects. And I can only say we have in our current project, which is a really big community app. We are extremely happy to use commands there, because it makes life much easier. It's so yeah. But I think it's really it's difficult also to when people have made several projects with one approach, they typically don't take the time to really look into new packages or in other packages and see, okay, if this might be even more interesting or easier to use. So yeah, that's not that easy.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for giving your time and
Yeah.
showing all the things. Like people really like the session and they tried it as well. Thank you so much for that.
What does Reddit say?
Yeah, 2 things, guys. So I think Simon is gonna move the the certificates into the shared drive. So it may look something like this. Yeah. So that's your certificates. I actually wanted to do something like this when I was presenting. Yeah. So the graffiti thing, doesn't work. So I found a new what do you call extension on Chrome, but doesn't work on full screen. So like, nope,
Oh,
this didn't work. But yeah, here you go. I'm doing it.
nice.
Okay, hand it off to Simon now.
Sure. All right. So we got some votes in the poll. We got 7 votes. 6 say yes, 1 say no. So I guess then that's a yes. So we'll do that. We'll carry on with that in a second. There were some questions actually in the poll. If you want to ask questions, feel free to put your hand up and you can speak on the mic if you want to, or we can answer Q&A in questions here. Yeah, please.
Hello.
Hey.
So my question is, if I have released any app on production, for example, if my app is present in App Store and Play Store, and after production, I want to monitor what my app is doing, monitor any issue and see the logs in general, which we have in Flutter. Is there any way to do that, like using the existing tools instead of going to like Sentry or something like that?
So, I mean, existing tools, that is the existing tool. I mean, you can use Crashlytics as well. Crashlytics supports logging, and the way it works is you report back your log lines that you would normally log out in your Flutter app, and then it does what's called a rolling buffer. So basically, it will only keep the last like 100 lines, and normally it's based on a amount of bytes, like 4 kilobytes or something. But you let's say last 100 lines of logs. And then when a crash occurs, you can then see the last 100 lines of logs, so that it kind of gives you an idea about what went wrong. But ideally, you can't just like monitor your application like you would if you're debugging it for all of your users, right? There's just way too much data, right? And it's not just that; you've also got privacy concerns and other things, right, to think about. So, for the one, I think that normally what you really want to be doing is things like Crashlytics allow for 2 types of report: a crash bug, an actual unexpected issue, and then you can also just report log events, right? So you can just say, here's an error that should never have occurred. So a good example of this is I think we talked about this in some of the previous sessions, but if you have an issue in your application, you normally raise an exception, and then that will be caught somewhere, and you can handle it. That might be just display the user a message saying, sorry, something went wrong, right? But what you normally in that situation, that you've handled the exception, your app continues to function. They can press the send button again, they can press whatever they want to do again, right? Now, when that occurs, you want to log that to your server. So you're not logging as a crash. It's not like Crashlytics default where something going totally wrong and you need to record it, but you can still record that error happening, and where you do that recording is entirely up to you. Normally, you do it in the sort of I say block layer, but in the business logic layer closest to the UI, and that way you get a chance to handle it a different way if you want to, and not report it if you need to before the last sort of point. But at the end of the day, you can report them. Then all the Sentry has that, all of them have that. Go on, Thomas. You want to add to that?
Yeah. Actually, we are using currently in our project Sentry, and it's really it's especially I have used it some years before, and when I look what they offer now, it's pretty amazing.
Oh yeah.
Especially what Sentry has very nice, that you can not really log, but it's called a breadcrumb. That means that you can just during normal execution, you save a breadcrumb to Sentry, but this is not directly sent to the server. It's just kept in a buffer that's can't grow too large. It will also in a rolling buffer, but the moment an exception occurs, or the moment that you log an exception, the list of breadcrumbs that you have already collected will be sent to the server. And this is a really, really powerful approach. What's really another service that is it's really nice to know about is Firebase Remote Config. Firebase Remote Config allows you very easily to enable or disable functionality in your distributed app. And so, for example, you can also use it, for example, to control more granularly how much logging and how much breadcrumbs do we collect, for example. Yeah. That we that when we see we have a certain errors are occurring more and more, then we switch we enable some switches to get more information back from the client that we wouldn't normally collect. So Firebase remote config, amazing tool. Can also be used very nicely if you want to inform your user that he should update your app, for example, and things like this. And it's the nice thing is it almost takes no time to set it up. It's really, really simple. Just it's just a map that you define in the console, more or less, and you get this map inside your Flutter code. So that's really nice.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
There's also talking about those feature flags. We did actually, if you go to the Flutter community YouTube channel for Hump Day this week, we did a section on, me and Randall did a section on this, I believe it was this week, where we spoke about how those feature flags can be used to like disable entire sections of your application and all sorts of other things. So it's worth looking into like what remote config can do for you, because although we've got things like Shorebird now for updates, it doesn't thanks, Randall. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that. Normally the practice for years has been you ship everything in your app, and then you remotely enable and disable configuration and options within your application and the behavior of your app at runtime by using something like remote config, right? So well worth looking into. Sorry, I'm not going to say Rakua. Have I got that anywhere remotely right? Please ask your question. You got your hand up?
Hi, mentors. This is Rukia. I am
Rukia. Sorry.
Okay.
Go on.
Yeah. No problem. So, how can a Flutter developer determine the most suitable state management approach for their specific file application type? Like we have different applications, e-commerce or banking application or language learning application. I did watch a video on on what state management is best. That video is by Majid Haijan, I guess. So I did watch it carefully, but I still have a confusion like what state management is best for particular type of application. How can I choose?
I see what you're saying. So I don't think there is an answer to that. So there's it's about how you approach state management, right? It's about how you build your app. I would love to hear Remy's answer on this one, but I don't think that there's any one solution that fits all. I think there's definitely I think any application, specific type of application, is more relative to how you build the app, not about the state management necessarily. But Remy, let's have Remy hear him speak about this.
Yeah, about this, I would say by avoiding the topic of which one is the best, what you can do to decide what you want to use is define a list of problems that you think are important to solve, like maybe logging, maybe reactivity, like when some state updates, something else needs to update, maybe offline, whatever. You combine a bunch of those, you look at the different options and see what's, like looking at the pros and cons, like maybe this one handles a specific feature better, but it's worse on the other side. And you try to look at what's more valuable for you and what's less important for you. And this way, hopefully, with enough questions, you'll kind of find what's the most suitable for you. Yeah. I would say that's the most what's the word? Less opinionated approach, I would say. Like, it removes part of the bias. Obviously, some of the bias will still be here. You may over-evaluate some options, but at least you'll give a fair share to some options.
It can. So I was going to say, on that point, it can also be that, you try each one and then see which one you like best, right? Which one works for you, that solves your problem, and then just use that, right? You go on, Thomas, please.
Also, Randall mentioned in his comment a very important point that some packages, for example, force you to be more disciplined than others. For example, and depending on your on the type of your developers, it may be helpful if you use a package that forces you to work very disciplined. The extreme example would be Redux, probably in this case, if you want to have very structured approach. But while other packages, for example, my approach is gives you a lot of freedom what you're doing. That really depends on if your team can deal with this and if they feel comfortable with them. Also, some expect, for example, I'm pretty sure you could even without problems you could combine my commands with Riverpod, for example, if you want to bring in the error handling of the commands, but you still want to use the state management from Riverpod. So you have a lot of flexibility what you can do, but in the end, it's really what's the way you feel comfortable with when you're coding. And also the question is in which, at least for me, it's always the how do you think about your application on your code? Yeah, I'm thinking extremely strongly in objects. Yeah, and then objects relations and all this stuff. So this is not everyone that does this. Yeah, others have more that they focus mostly on the UI and see how this is. So it's really something. And in the end, a matter of taste. Give it a try. See what you like. There are differences in how much boilerplate code you have to produce, how much flexibility you have or you have not. For example, Riverpod has the big advantage that the most errors are already caught by the analyzer that you could have, from my understanding. While yeah, you have to live if you use get-it. You have to live with some exceptions if you don't register an object, but it's normally not really a problem. But it's really, yeah, it's you have to try different packages to see what fits best for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Are there any more questions? Don't see it in the chat. Oh, sure.
I just have one question. So currently we are making an application which is like map intensive. However, our solution does not require Google Maps, so we have to use Mapbox. However, when we implement Mapbox using Android View, because of no native Flutter support, we are having extreme like performance issues. But those are occasionally in that component. I think it's because of the graphic engine or something like that. Because when we use expensive view, it works, but with like very high lags, and it doesn't like hangs the entire app, but just that particular map component. Is there any fix, or like am I doing something wrong in there?
May I just ask you directly, why are you using the Android view with Mapbox? From my understanding, you can use the Flutter map package, which is what is called the OpenStreetMap interface, which Mapbox also offers.
Yeah, like I said, you can use it with Mapbox, right? So Flutter_map package works with Mapbox.
Yeah.
So you can use that. That's native. There's also Mapbox GL. I don't remember how they're doing that, but I believe they just use the library render to GL texture and then represent that inside of Flutter as well. That's another mechanism.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. I mean, it could just be that what you're seeing there is a suboptimal, plugin, or essentially, right? Like the way that it's trying to transfer the data back and forth. So, for example, the way that the Google Maps package works, it's very declarative in the way you use the widget. But if they were to send over, let's say you had 10,000 pins, and if you were just to send them over the channel and ask the map to render them all, now you're sending, maybe every time you build, you're sending 10,000 pins across. Well, that's going to be slow no matter what package you're using, right? So again, it could also be about how your implementation is being handled. You probably want to be more specific about what data you're showing on the map. Normally, you can do this math if you go look up the map, it's quite straightforward. But doing like lat long bounds boxes and just say, okay, what are the things that I need to show that are in bounds of the screen right now, and then just sending those across to the plugin. Because otherwise, you're going to send all this data across, and then most of it's going to be culled and not used. They'll do optimizations for this, but you're still having to serialize the information across the channel, which still takes
and actually, Flutter Map is this way really flexible. You can easily add additional layers on top of the actual map that it's supported. I really would give this first a try before using any Android component for this.
Okay, the reason I have to use Mapbox is, first of all, I need to show heat map of the demand. Second, I need the Mapbox in-app sat-nav capabilities to be shown in my app. Does Flutter Map supports that? Because I don't think it supports that level of.
It does support that. It's Flutter Map itself isn't specific. You still use Mapbox, but Flutter Map is how it renders it inside the app.
Yeah. Mapbox has an OpenStreetMap API, and that's the point that you can access with the Flutter Map.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So yeah, you can do whatever layers you want, whatever data that you can get from Mapbox, you can display in Flutter Map. Hopefully that makes it a little bit less cumbersome, right? I've already forgotten how to pronounce your name again. Sorry, but please ask your question. Terrible. Sorry.
It's a Rukia, right?
Kia.
It's Ruka. It's Ruka. You can call me Kia. My little sister called me Kia.
Okay.
So my question is, what are effective strategies for optimizing the performance of the Flutter application? Like in last few weeks, I was checking the performance of my application, my office project. So the all logic stuff was in my providers. When I was testing, I was checking my application. Then in DevTools, in particular screens, I was watching like there are some frames, more frame, like they were loading a lot. I don't know how to like adjust or UI stuff, like how to optimize UI of the app. How can I? What are the strategies?
I don't think there's a specific one specific answer to that. Optimizing. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is you're dropping frames, and there's a lot of logic happening inside your providers. You think that's the cause. You can use the dev tool to look at your the CPU. You do CPU profiling, which tells you like what is your hot code path. That is what's using up all the time. But that may not necessarily give you what's missing. That it tells you what's most busiest on the CPU for the time period, but not necessarily what's causing your dropped frames. You can go look at the inside of the dev tools. We maybe look at this in a minute, but inside the dev tools, there's also a frame analyzer, and it'll show you what you spend the time doing. If the time is like during build, it highlights build, and in which case you can go, okay, what am I doing during build? And there's actually a way of getting further more details. There's a little tick box in there that you can tick. I can show you that. But you might want, I mean, again, this is mainly about how you build your widgets. One thing is a lot of the time people end up building these really long widget hierarchies in build, and then using methods to build sub portions of the tree. This means that when the top build function is called, it builds everything. It builds the entire tree, calls each function, calls the constructors and all those, and performs a lot of logic. And you might find that you're just doing too much during build, in which case you can fix that by just making sub-widgets, right? So a lot of the time by making a sub-widget, you're essentially making a little cacheable entity of the UI. Another thing is just reduce the amount of builds that you're doing, I think, and that's a case of inside DevTools. Maybe I can share my screen here. Hang on, let's see what that. See if this comes through. I talk about this, and I think it's probably easier just to show you. Inside the inspector tools, at least in, you should find that there's one here for, so this is the application you see here. Now you see as I'm moving up and down, frames are coming in. And when I stop, frames are not being rendered. If I have a consistent like frames being rendered, that's because something's animating. Let's say I have a loading spinner or something, right? So you might another problem that people have in Flutter is that they'll hide the opacity, like they'll use the opacity widget to hide the rendering of, let's say, a piece of the UI, but it's still animating. So that means it's still asking for frames to be drawn. So there's actually a widget that if you want to stop your animations on a subtree, it's called ticker mode. Ticker mode, you wrap your tree in this, and then there's an enabled flag that you can set that turns off tickers in the subtree. That's tickers are the way animation gets run. So that could also help in terms of cutting out animations that you don't need. There's also, you're talking about rebuilds. There's this tick box track widget rebuilds. And as you can see here, on one frame rendering right now, we've got 4 app icons, 4 icon buttons, 4 stream builders. So I know it's a bit small. 94 on the current screen, 94 SVG pictures. I mean, there's a lot of them on here, right? That's probably counting all of these, you know, that you see off the screen as well. And so on and so forth. So what we can literally do is click on something and actually see how much the last frame was and how much of the current frame is being rendered. And if we can see that there's like some huge number or it's just ticking over all the time and we're seeing builds, we can go look and go, okay, what do I need to optimize? Why is that getting built so much? And then you can go look at your providers and possibly, you know, what is the logic that's being run that's causing it to build so often. There is like this thing that you get with, there is that something that, I mean, Remy can talk to this more than me, but you can get like a, depending on how you build your providers, you might get like a trickle down effect, right? So you change some state at the top level, that changed another provider, that changed another provider, that changed another provider, and you end up rebuilding like your entire UI of your app because of that, right? So you again need to think about how you're connecting up your providers and what actually depends on something else, or can you lift that state up into a different provider so you don't have so many rebuilds of an entire subtree. You know what I'm talking about, Remy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. I'm not sure if I would have anything special to add here. But yeah, in general, I guess you have to benchmark and find out the issue and investigate. It's not really there's a general solution.
Yeah, that's actually an aspect that I wanted to throw in. Really, before you start optimizing anything, try to find out what's the problem. There's also classes like the stopwatch class, for example, which is really helpful if you really want to know how much time does a certain amount of code, especially in business logic code, how much does it really take? And I'm really convinced that in 80% of the times, it's not your UI code that's really the problem. For example, a a lot of times it's also that maybe your backend is slow. Yeah, for this actually is the network analyzer that are in the dev tools is really amazing. I only recently started using it. Before I was always using something like Fiddler also, but the built-in network analyzing tool is amazing. Especially it shows you exactly how much time did the connection build up take, how much time was waited, how much time is download of the data amount. Yeah, so you. And in many cases, it's really the backend, the bottleneck, and not the UI.
Yeah, I second that definitely. It's kind of working out where your time's been spent, and working out where what's causing that time to be spent, essentially, because there's so much a computer can do, so a CPU can do. Like when you're the foreground application, especially on mobile, you get a lot of resources, so they shouldn't see any problems unless something's going amiss. I want to kind of clear this up. There's actually this notice at the top here. You see it in yellow, basically saying that I'm in debug mode, so it's not indicative of the release performance. There's no point me doing checks on performance in debug mode because it won't be like this. It's definitely slower in here. So that's one of the reasons why when you build, you get to actually build in what's called profile mode. Profile mode is what you should be using. It does mean you have to do a full rebuild each time you do it, but you can add an additional run parameter -- profile in here on the command lines, flutter run -- profile, and that will run a profile version of your application, in which case you'll see this notice will disappear. Like it's actually here, like relaunching profile mode. There you go, flutter run -- profile on the website. I'll pop this in the chat for anyone that wants to go read it. And that's where you should be doing your performance checking. There's no point doing it in the debug version of your app, okay? Just FYI, because it will fluctuate because it depends on how you're doing and what logging you're doing and all sorts of other things, right? I do want to show this. So what you're seeing here is you have these two lines. Some people are kind of want to know a bit more about sort of how to actually understand these charts and debug things. So each one of these is the frame. So far it's been recorded, the numbers underneath. Each frame has two segments. One is the UI, one is the raster. So the UI section is essentially what we spoke about before: build, layout, and paint. So you can see here the first phase is build. So it took 120 milliseconds. The second phase is layout, 3 milliseconds, and the last phase here is paint, 3.9 milliseconds. That tells you how much of your potential frame you've used. Well, if you want to get 60 FPS, then you need to make sure that you're within 17 milliseconds per frame. That's essentially both of these joined together. It's a bit more complicated than that. There's an overlap between them of 50%. I won't go into the way that works, but the point here is if you want to reach 90 FPS, which is correct on scrolling, for example, on modern phones, then you need to reach 11 milliseconds per frame. As soon as you go above these lines, then you're going to get jank. You're going to see a frame drop. Now, here you'll see that we've got build 120 milliseconds. So I now know that when I scrolled this or whatever I was doing at the time, I can't remember, that a build took longer than this, right? And then we could go looking into that. Now, it tells you here, build was taking longer. Enhanced tracing, which is also in settings up here. If you press the settings cog, that's it was settings cog. They've moved it. Anyway, enhanced tracing. You can turn on track widget builds within our code. And what's going to happen is when we go and look at the actual events. So by the way, this 3 tabs is how you analyze one frame. Let me just explain these two bars. So the first one is UI. That's those 3 phases. This happens inside the framework. And then raster is how much time the GPU took to render the frame. If you can't deliver both of these in that time, in that sort of certain amount of time, then it will jank basically. And that's where these red bars come in. So these red bars are saying you're going to get janked frame, and you can see here, jank or slow frame or shader compilation issue because it's happening on the GPU side. The there's not much you can do about shader compilation, Jane, apart from sort of there is actually a page where you can pre-compile your shaders and ship them in your app. I won't go into that right now. There is a page on flutter.dev. You essentially use your app and it will record all the graphical events. And
I think with since Impeller, that's not necessary anymore.
I know, but it's not on Android yet.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, as he says, as Thomas was saying there, the need for this is going away with Impeller when that eventually makes its way out to production for everything, right? But if you want to release your app now, there is actually a page on flutter.dev. Hang on, let's see if I can find it quickly. Yeah, I think this is the page. There we go. Yes, so SKS, or this is Skier Shader Language warm-up. SKSL is Skier Shader Language. And you do this, like what we just said, you're running profile mode, cache Skier SL, and then what you actually get out of this is some JSON files, and then you, this goes through it here, but you get some JSON files, and then you ship them inside your app. And essentially that is how it works. And then you basically, when it starts up, you won't need to, but yeah, here it's more likely to shader compilation. Stable is for iOS and preview on Android at the moment. Anyway, right, back to what we're just talking about here. So, so you get these two things. You get these two phases. You can analyze the raster, and you can analyze the timeline events. And this is basically showing you here, like what part of your UI took what amount of time to render. So you could see if you've got like a certain part of your UI that's taken too long, if that kind of makes sense, right? For your frame. And actually here, the most complicated bit, overall, this is probably the entire screen overall, but 3.4 milliseconds was this section here, as you can see, right?
They really improved the tooling. This is
then you've also got timeline events, which we're not going to capture right now. Hang on, let's see if I can capture something in. Am I still tracking? I think I need to be in debug, but we'll see. No, I think we're good. Here we go. So this is Perfetto. Perfetto, can't say it, but you can control. Scroll your mouse to zoom in, and then you can highlight portions and look at those portions. If I can, sorry, let me hide this top Flutter frame information. Give ourselves a bit of space. So if I can find the right button. Oops, too far. Oh. Well, anyway, I'm not going to find the right hotkeys obviously now. Lucky me. But if I zoom out here, let's see if I zoom out. So this in its entirety is one frame of rendering, and as you can see here, layout took this long, paint took this long. This is the portion of paint. Compositing, now this is in the graphics card, and this is the breakdown of essentially what's happened to do the rendering in the graphics card side of things. So if you'll see you should have basically essentially both of these per frame. So that's multiple frames right there. Sorry, I'm not doing too well on scrolling around this damn thing because okay, there we go. Sorry. So yeah, so that kind of gives you an example. We have multiple frames. If we recall build, like what we're talking about earlier, so I'll get to this. So here's a long, was that the 120? Anyway, so there's build, there's layout, there's paint. And if you look into these, underneath this is something that happened during layout, render flex intrinsics. And if I was to scroll across, my hotkeys are not working, sorry. During paint, if we keep zooming in, here are the various things that happen during paint. We've got whatever that is. I was hoping for a tooltip. They've changed this recently. Anyway. So by turning on those extra flags, enhanced tracing, what we should get, I may have to run this in, I'm going to just track everything for a second, and we're going to see how well this works. So we'll clear everything, and then we'll get a frame or two. There we go. Let's see if we can capture something in here. There we go. So this is so by turning those enhanced tracing on, it records a lot of events. Now, I do want to explain this. You will drive yourself crazy trying to like. First of all, I'm in debug mode, so none of this is accurate, right? Even in profile mode, it still won't be accurate. You cannot, by the act of, it's like quantum mechanics. By the act of tracing it, you delay the actual use of your app. So when you get down to a point where you're trying to optimize something, and by just trying to monitor what you're optimizing, you have so much fluctuation in your numbers that you're in the noise, as they say, and you cannot like you have to like step away, right, and think about it and not actually use the tooling to kind of find those issues. A lot of the time, yeah, as I said, you've got to imagine that what's happening right now when we do this and turn the reason why those are behind flags is because you can't leave on all the time because the performance of your app is just grossly wrong, right? Because it has to spend time logging all this information, capturing all those events, sending them back across the network channel from your device, even if it's an emulator, to your debugger. And the debugger has to log down. All that takes time, right? So, so yeah, if I zoom in here, this is showing you here in this case. Let's see if I can find. Do I have a build? Well, let's zoom into the layout here. Zoom in, enhance. I feel like there is actually a way of getting this more vertically extended, but I can't remember how. Perfetto is the new one, by the way. This is all new UI. Oh, look, there's a help button. Tell me. Oh, look, there you go. Click and drag, select area, pan left and right. Shift, click and drag. Shift, click and drag. Ah, look, I'm learning. What else we got here? Zoom in, zoom out. Click an event, select event. I'll have to look through that later. But there you go. So anyway, so here layout. During that, there was a render sliver. After that render sliver, we did a render sliver main access group. During that, the way that this what is the name of this chart? I forgot the name of this type of chart. Anyway, but the point here is what's shown this section is what happened during that point, right? So render main sliver group did everything below this, if that kind of makes sense. And then render sliver padding during that did this render sliver, whatever that is, and so on and so forth. So that's how this kind of stacks up. Everything below it that's smaller is happening during the time of the thing above. So that's why when we zoom out, we can say everything happened during begin frame, right? That's like the callback for doing something on the framework, for the framework running a screen, sorry. And then you'll see the same here for paint. Most of this paint of the screen, sorry, we'll get used to these hotkeys. Zoom out. So if we look at this, most of this was spent during render viewport, which is the main scrolling content. And in this case, does it tell us not? Did not tell us the time. Do I have to highlight it? I don't know. They are 12.5 milliseconds, according to the little bar up the top here. And of that time, we could say render sliver to box adapter. This one took 6.2 milliseconds, and so on and so forth, right? So this can help you kind of analyze where time has been spent. And if you want to do it yourself, you can actually do it. So if I can remember it, I think, is it trace? The one time I'm trying to remember what it's in .dev, isn't it? I think. You can actually trace your code and report your own events into this Perfetto log. So if you want to look at how, like, let's say, so I've forgotten here, I think that's right, was saying, like, she was asking where to do this. Well, you can also use the trace statements to surround maybe one of your providers, like the logic in your providers, and you can see how long it's taking to do that, and each one, and then you could see in time in this chart, and that might give you some indication as to where your time has been spent or how it's been spent. Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find this briefly because it's going to bug the hell out of me. Dev.
Okay, Simon, I have to leave you.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah.
And yeah.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Thomas. Thanks.
Let's see if we can find Dart Developer. I swear it's in here. Timeline. That's the one I was looking for. Timeline. So this is how it works. And I'll bring this up bigger. So yeah, timeline starts synchronous. You do something, finish synchronous, and that's how you record the how long that bar took during the execution of your application. And you can also do you can see the function callback. There's also an asynchronous method, which where is it? I can't remember where it is. I think you have to, if you remember right, you get a callback back. I think time is a time on task. I forget. Start. I think this is it. Yeah, you do start sequence operation. I know it's there somewhere, but anyway, the point here is this is the easiest way to add to that timeline. But make sure you if you want to keep these in your app, put them behind a Dart define or some flag that you turn on and off, something like global constant, so that you can disable them, because again, they will slow down your app. If you leave them in there, they're still going to run during production. They're just not going to report. But no code that no code that you run is better than better for performance. So all right, that's me shutting up about that. I think. Is anyone got any more questions about this kind of stuff? I don't know. I mean, like, there's just it's a black hole, really, and we spent some long, quite a while talking about this. Oh yeah, please. Canon.
Things that I really do studying the WoW app approach with
You're breaking up a bit. Perhaps you can just type your question. Maybe that works well.
Yeah, is that better?
Oh yes, much better.
Yeah. It's so I know you were setting out with the WoW app to do state management with kind of all the in-house Dart and Flutter things that you had at your disposal, and it was really interesting how you handled things like with the two repos on extending the inheritance widget, but you also used things like streams for the wish list page. So it was a kind of general question of how did you come to these design decisions? Was there anything?
There's no particular. What I was trying to do with the reason why they're all different like that is just to show you the different ways.
Cool.
I wouldn't say I would use one thing over another. You were just speaking. What was it? Sorry, it was the streams used in wishes, and what was the other one?
The way you had the two repos in backend, and they were kind of provided with, I think, through inheritance widget, and you also extended something as well.
Yeah, so I think this is more a case of I mean, just ease of access, right? So half of this is, we can bring it up here. This is the code. If anyone haven't seen it, so we did some extensions here, and these extensions are basically just a way of providing access to easier access. So during your application, if you're in a state class, you can put cart repo, and that'll do content cart repo, and which will do backend cart repo, which will look at an inherited widget to get that. This is, like, again, the thing here is this is not very optimal, but also not suboptimal, right? So we haven't reached any performance bottlenecks, so this would be a concern. But if the more and more you start adding to your application, like, you might at this point, this makes it so that pretty much anywhere where you use any one of these things, you're going to be, that widget depends on this inherited widget, right? But it doesn't listen to them, right? That's the key, right? So we're just using this as a shortcut to avoid having to traverse the tree all the time to find backend, which is what essentially kind of like a singleton, right? In this sense, it acts as a holder for these repositories, and the repository themselves have whatever mechanism that we want. So I think we didn't actually end up using like all these could be change notifiers, right? There's nothing in here that says we can't do it a certain way. I think we did show how to do some. I thought we did some change value notifier somewhere. Maybe I ended up just doing streams. But again, I think streams are quite nice because you're essentially emitting a series of events, and then there's, if you want to pipeline those and map them or convert them, it's easier per se. But we haven't had to have build our own sort of framework around them because it already exists. The listenable interface as part of Flutter is always pretty much everything inside Flutter, right? So all the controllers, text controller, scroll controller, all of the custom custom pane, custom layout, they all take a listenable to rebuild. So something that me and Randall were talking about actually on Wednesday was it's a shame that the platform doesn't have a built stream to listenable or listenable to stream converters. So maybe we should be submitting a PR back to the framework for that, because that's a common use case if you're trying to use streams with those other things. So you can imagine like you could have a stream rebuild a custom pane directly by just handing back a listenable, right? There's no reason why you couldn't do that. So there's some interesting things you can do with the stuff that's built in for sure. This pattern's just, it worked. And it kept it simple enough, I think. I would say that the use of streams probably has overcomplicated this in the way that they're being used here. Maybe we could talk about, I'll show you maybe some other ways of dealing with this and what you could possibly do to make it slightly easier, as it were, slightly better. I mean, if people are still interested in state management stuff, we could refactor a little bit and start tidying it up. We haven't really gone back to anything. I'll leave that to...
Simon, it really was super interesting going through the code. And one of the things I gave in my feedback at the end, just when we were submitting, was that it did actually make me go back and look over parts of Dart and Flutter where I was pretty shaky, but that were really useful. Seeing them being used and seeing the kind of the artful way you put things together really got me thinking, and looking at things like change notifier and streams and yeah, the inherited widget and the things that are there integral and as part of Dart and Flutter. And I hope going forward that I'll really dig into some of these things, and it'll make me a better developer.
Well, thank you. I think it will. I think no matter what framework you decide, no matter what package or framework you decide to use on that's built, it's always built on top of, for another better with the fundamentals that are already built in, even if it's just callbacks. And understanding those principles and techniques really help you understand those packages, especially when something goes wrong. And you're like, you just put your hands up and I don't know how this works. So I've got no concept of how to solve this. Well, if you know some of the fundamentals underneath, it kind of gives you a direction to start looking for solutions for whatever issue you get. So yeah, definitely worth looking into. I think there's definitely things in here that I would, coming back to this, I would do better. Yes, Sumit, please. Yeah, sorry.
No, just saying it's top of the hour. Some of the guys may need
if you need to head off, yeah.
And just have one suggestion. If we can all come on camera, we can do like a group selfie.
Yeah.
That is something that we could do before we officially say, well, top of the hour. And yeah, the Devcamp
And
stuff.
everyone should, like, if anyone should switch on their camera so that we can have a photo. We can also.
So yeah, guys, if you want to jump in. Oh, there you go. And now I can see the nice words come from that face. Thank you. I was reading your email. Good long email.
Right.
Yeah.
How many more faces are we going to get? Let's see. We got a few more cameras coming on.
Good.
Oh, no.
I'll try to get one of
People
those.
getting their good faces on. Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're doing a countdown, Simith.
3, 2, 1. Oh, there you go. That's a swag. He got his first swag.
Right. Are you going to take the screenshot, Simith?
Renuka is doing it. So
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to do a countdown, Renuka?
Yeah. 1, 2, and 3. Let me do that.
Yeah. We got it? We got it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. There you go.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Like I'm going to leave now. So thank you so much, everyone, be to part of this Flutter Devcamp 2023 for the state management. Maybe just watch this space. We are bringing something more. Maybe we can have like a separate, the whole bootcamp for the each state management. We don't know. We will plan something definitely. So yeah, thank you so much.
I'll continue on here a little bit
Yeah.
longer if people want to stick around. Otherwise, feel free to head off.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to
Bye.
move too, by the way.
Bye.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming,
Remy.
Remy. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Remy.
All right, let's see.
See you on F3. If someone
Yeah.
people are leaving.
Is anyone is coming for F3, then we are going to
Yes. Well,
meet you there. Yeah. Bye.
let's see. Touch screen. Let's see how we go. Let's see if we can get we get a little bit more time in, I think, for those who want to stick around. Thanks, Sheree. Thanks for coming. No worries. No worries. Right. Do we have anyone left? We got a few people left. All right.
You got 17 people in there.
Cool. All right. Well, I was thinking about this. So first of all, I did actually find a bug just now. So I figured that we'll talk about that briefly. So when I first started this up, just from not starting up for a while, my token had expired with Firebase, and then we got the login changed event occurred, and it crashed because the Navigate state was not actually ready yet. So we can chuck this in a micro task and hope that it's ready. We don't really care that much if so if I go back to our actual application top level here where it monitors that, we start monitoring the auth repo quite early on before we initialize backend, which means that when it comes down to this point where we actually monitor that backend being loaded, we haven't actually put the navigate key into action yet. And that's the problem. But when this does go into action, it does show the correct screen. So we can actually get away also with this not actually navigating. So another way of dealing with this right now is to possibly remove this, make it optional. And then when we use it, we just ignore the events. So we've kind of got the bonus of both mechanisms being working here. The whole auth piece, I'd like to change, ideally, in some other way. We could play around with that. I did mention before about the streams, so maybe I'll show you how I would simplify the streams if we bring another package in. And again, maybe that will introduce you guys to another option. So there's a package called RxStart. I think I brought this up before. RxStart, run by the community. Probably need to speak to the maintainers and push an update for. We're saying this about Flutter 3, so we can have a bit more, have records and other things being better supported. But if we add RxStart, when it comes to things like, we'll go for the wish list here. We have stream controllers. These go the way of the dinosaur now because Rx has a thing called subjects. I don't want to let people in.
Well, did it. That's
Okay.
all right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So as we had use RX is a thing called subjects. Subjects replace stream controllers. We have there's two major types of subject in RX, and let's see if I can get them up in here. You have a behavior subject, and this is quite a common thing that you want to do. And a special stream controller that captures the latest item that has been added to the controller and emits it as the first item to any new listener. Right, so that is quite a common case that people want to do. And the idea about this is each time you emit something, you keep hold of the latest state, and when you have a new listener start listening to that stream, it will give them the current state. So this is kind of basic. A behavior subject is when you want to maintain some value inside your stream, but also emit new values as they come through. Whereas there's another type called publish subject. If it'll come up for me, probably not. No, my luck. Publish subject. There you go. A published subject is more of a what the way normal streams work, which is it just emits the value to the current listeners. It doesn't retain the last value and emit it when anyone connects. But as it says here, this acts as a stream and a sync, so you can it can and not just emit but receive as well. But yeah, these are kind of common, and there's a bunch of extensions that kind of go into these. All these extensions provide the RX functionality, but they provide them to any sort of stream. So even if you've got a normal stream and you have RX, you actually get the benefits. And this is different from other RX libraries. So there's, by the way, this RX is like a scheme of using streams. Providing streams to languages that don't have streams natively built in, like Dart does. So RX for Dart basically augments Dart streams to provide a more RX style of interaction, for want of a better word. So here, wishlist controller dot stream dot let's just include RX. It should give me all the suggestions then. See if I get with my luck, my chance that I don't get it. Debounce, concap with, delay, distinct, do on whatever, drain, end with, every. Some of these are built in, flat map. These are all like group by is another one that you might want to use. There's just map, materialize, max, min. So you just get like essentially all of these extensions to streams. So if you're using streams, this is basically just really enhances how you use streams. The fact that you have all this extensions to streams. Right? Anyway, like example here, throttle, time interval, timeout. There's just so many. That's not even all of them. I think it's just the ones that are coming up here. So what we've done here in the wish list was the original concept. So we have a stream controller, a list of products, and it broadcasts. And when a new listener comes in, it emits the wish list to those new broadcasters. So this disappears, and we can just replace this with a now with a final behavior subject of this type. Yeah. And then what you always want to do, so to stop nullability and all that kind of fun stuff occurring, a stream, if you just make one like this, has a null, because as I said, it keeps track of the last value behavior subject. You want to normally initialize a behavior subject with a value. So in this case, if we do seeded constructor, we give it a value of a blank list, right? So just good practice to always do this. It may be that we always make sure it's initialized with a value before we do anything with it. But again, really good practice. So yeah, and when we initialize, we don't actually need to do anything anymore, because this is now done all in line inside the constructor of this. We could, if we wanted to keep this like same functionality, put this as late and then do it. But it's always nice to have final wherever you can. It means you don't reinitialize something by mistake. So we can say, well, we could just maybe remove this now if we don't need it. There we go. So we can just get rid of that. So now when we want to emit something, it's exactly the same. Let's call this subject, just to be clear. That's now subject. We can just add items to the stream. However, you can also set the value, the current value of the stream, which is the same thing. When you add an item, it sets it as the current value, and vice versa, I think it is. Yeah, see, value just calls add. It's the same thing. I'm going to pop that back to what it was. Oops, too far. What else changes in here? So there was we kind of did this weird yieldy thing, because that was a way of doing it with the original stream stuff, but it kind of got a bit complicated. So what we actually want to do here is we want to create the idea, at least, of this function is to create a stream of the wish of booleans for this particular product item from the wish list, and then emit those. So one way we're doing it right now is using yield. That's perfectly fine and viable, and this all continues to work. What we can do is map the original stream. So we can do a initial value on a stream, and then pipe data from another stream, which essentially is the same thing. Maybe you find this more readable than the way I'm going to approach this. So we want to we don't really need, yeah, hang on, let's think. We want to return it was stream wish list items for this item. And each item we want to map. And this is the list. Oops. And then for each item of the list, we want to say, does that list contain any item with, so we can continue with this here. Where is bull coming from? Stream is in wish list. Oh no, that's the wrong one. I'm calling self. Come guys. Help me out. Right, there we go. So this is going to stream the wish list, a set of wish list items, which was it, a list of product item, I think it was. I can't remember. And then if anyone contains this, it's going to return a boolean. So this is great, returns that, but I mean, wait a second. No, that's it. That's all we need to do. For mapping the existing one, we also want to return back the immediate value. But it so happens that now this stream wish list is the wish list subject. It always emits the current value, right? So that is how simple this function became with the change to Rx subjects, right? Off the back of this, we could also look into saving. So look, there's some questions coming in. Why not? Is it better to move the wishlist item stream outside into a separate class to handle state? Ah, interesting. Actually, I was going to in this anyway. So you're actually ahead of me here, but that's actually where we were actually trying to take this. So the problem we've got, I mean, we'll do that next. Why not? So we'll let One of the problems that we've actually got with this, which is what's been mentioned here, is the fact that we're actually just emitting a set of list of product items, which is great. But the problem here is you can't extend that. That's the real problem here, right? When it comes to adding stuff to the wish list, we're kind of stuck. We either make more streams or we modify this stream. And so normally it's a case where you want to what's the word? Manage it as more of a state-driven aspect, and this kind of matches more what you kind of see from the other brain. Come on, provider, like not provider packages. What I'm saying, state management package. Right. So what we want to do here is have wish list repost state, for want of a better word. Right now, we could just have maybe wish list state, I guess. Yeah, let's call it just wish list state. So the current wish list state contains a list of products, right? So this is items, I guess. Let's call it items. And then this is where it kind of gets nice. So let me just, well, let's put this in here first, and then I'll show you why this is kind of nice. We'll start seeing it. So if you were to have, you could have multiple states. This doesn't really need it the way that we have this right now. There's not really the need for that in the way our wishes works. But if you want to, we can actually go to the auth and make auth work better as more of a state managed thing, where we use sealed classes. But in this case, you could do final class. Right? This is not a library. I would use final class. If you're making a library, don't ever use final classes. Just because it means that when any person wants to use your library, they can't extend any of your classes. It just, yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway, but in this case, we want this to be the final state, the only subclass, you know, the only class type of this will be wish list state, right? And if we wanted to add more, we would refactor it to add more, right? So now we've done that, we can pop that up here into our wish list state, and now we see, well, now we have a problem, right? We need to make sure that we've got an empty state. I'll show you an empty state. Strictly speaking, we don't really care about that in here because we're always guaranteed to load some value at the very beginning. But I'll show you how this works, because this is kind of a good example of this. So you might have a sealed class called wish list state, const wish list state. And then we have wish list loaded active state. I don't know. Sound this wish list state. And then we can also do a final class wish list none state. I don't know. We could actually do state none. That's probably state none and state active. Sure. It's always good to keep them similar in terms of naming. Don't just start them off with different things, because when you get your suggestions, you're actually going to get your selection right next to each other, alphabetically speaking, right? So yeah. So here's our base. Now we're coding with a vanilla block. Yeah, similar. So now you've got your base class, right? That all states must extend. We have our none state and our active state. So if we now go to say that this emits a wish list state, and its default instance is going to be of state none. Right? And then once we get a value, we want to emit that on the stream. So in this case, I seem to remember we load them. Hang on, where are we? Wish list from storage. Am I missing something here? Oh, you know what it is. Oh, look, I think our init needs to come back, or at least so yeah, do you know what? I'm just going to put it back in here. We don't, strictly speaking, we don't actually need it. We could do this a different way, but I think it's a good example. So when we initialize, we can take our storage, get the last value from our storage. Sure. Yeah, we can get our current value of items. Where I'm feeling this is, oh, because I did a mapping. Sorry, remember even how I did that before. See, okay, so let me just explain what's going on here and why this is different. When you get the current wish list items, what this is actually doing is it's taking the current wish, the set of wish list item IDs, that's what we're storing in here. This should really have comments. And then mapping each one through find product from the products repo to give us a list of products, which is fine, it works. When it comes to a stream, however, you know, this is obviously not going to match up right now. And when we add items, sorry, I'm just trying to remember what the hell emit. Somewhere we need to map them. I don't even remember where I was mapping them before. Oh yeah, there we go. So, okay. So what this is doing here is each time we wanted to update the wish list, we would run through this same mapping process here in this getter and then emit that on the stream. It works. There's better ways of doing it though. Let's see if we can actually do this. I think that's fine. Yeah. So what we'll do is when we want to emit, what we're going to do is emit an active state with a list of items. So what we probably want here is a mapping function that we can use, and then a init can use it. So we want an active state saying map state, I don't know, list string map products, map wish list products, product ID is a set. I think that's what we had. You just do iterable actually. Iterable is the base type for like set and list, so you can use either. So this is taking those product IDs, mapping them, convert it back to a list, and then we want to put that in the current active state. Bosh. Right. So we can now say, what was the wish list subject, add mapping of wish list items. So that does the same thing. And then if we actually want to emit that value, do the same thing here. So shortcut that. So this should be and then this becomes a map as well. We can shortcut this, but I think this is fine. So was it wish list? This is always going to be wish list items. I feel like we could optimize this slightly. See, this is the problem. Like we're always having this. This is quite implicit in the behavior. So when we modify the wish, when we add to the wish list, we always need, we're saying emit and then save. However, that process is not saying emit what, right, or save what. It's assuming that it's the wish list that we've updated. So there's a point at which we change it and don't emit it. So it could be beneficial to just treat this as one thing where we pass it in and say update wish list, rather than be this sort of pedantic over how it works. So we could streamline this all a bit, basically. That's what I'm going to get at. Let's bring this down. So stream of wish list is going to be wish list state. And mapping is fine. Stream is in wish list, so this is going to be now. This is why I put the type on there, right? Because if I remove the type now, we get a problem with any. That, well, why is any broken, right? Rather than it's not a list anymore, it's now state, right? So we could do this, but now we're going to get state none because that also matches this type when it went at the very beginning, let's say. And so what we can do is have a where type, and we can say where type was state active. And now we can be assured that the state that we're going to get is always going to be the active state. And then the list of items are going to be, was it state items, right? So that's how you, sorry, I've got errors, so I can't format right now, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Right, I cut that one too. So we got add, remove, save, and emit. So let's go find that emit. Remove, emit. So I'm trying to remember what wish list was now. Is that like the storage state class? I think it was, yeah, wish list storage. Which is, we don't really care about the storage directly, and I think that's probably the wrong way of dealing with this. We definitely want to update it, but I think we want a new set of items, and then storage can be updated in here. So we do the wish list copy with, and then what does that need? Right when I need you. It's because I've got errors. Really? You let me down. Where do we even put that? Is it over here? No, somewhere else. See, we probably should move that around, to be fair. Maybe we'll do that as well. So what was I? Items. So set of string. All right. So again, maybe not a set. We could actually let's do an iterable of string. We call it wish list IDs, product IDs, product IDs, product IDs. Update wish list. So immediately this is going to be items, product IDs. So we update the model just like above. Once we update that, that's fine. We update the storage, but then we want to take those same IDs, run them through our mapping, and add them to the stream. And then this is going to hopefully save it to disk so we can come back to it later. So now we've got very much an atomic function. You can see exactly what we're trying to do, right? And we can even obviously comment this a bit more and explain what it's actually doing. But now we can get rid of these two functional things that we were rushing to do. Now we have one update. Update is going to take the new set of items, like so. That's seeming better. Stream wishes, we'll come back to that. It's in wishes, we've got our active state. Set of products. So what have we got here? What was we doing? We're saying current wish list items. So really this is current wish list state. So let me say current state, and this would be stream state. I'll just make that change. Yeah, that's a good idea. So this becomes quite easy. This is just wish list dot items. Right now, one minute. Wish list subject dot value. It's the current value. This is the streamed value. And then when we start up, we want to make sure that we update our in-memory wish list, that is what's in our stream, to what we have when we started. So we'll pop that in there and map the products that we loaded from disk from our storage. All right. Yeah, all right. We'll leave it in this order, but probably could tidy up a little bit more. Let's see what else do we have here. Stream wish list. Oh yeah, stream state. I think that's all the errors. Let's format that. Okay, we can tidy that up slightly with a false line break. It's a shame. Let's see. Can we make that a little bit nicer? Eh. No. No, I won't leave it like that. Sorry. Right. Okay, so now we've broken probably some areas of the app that we need to get fixed. And we're talking about feature-driven stuff, and we've got the page here. What we could actually do, I know we do a backend like this, but we could also move that into wish list, right? And then the wish list storage up here. Right, we're going to have to change a few things around probably. That's fine. Let's see. What do we have error-wise? So current state, stream state. So we made this kind of like consumer idea, very similar to other state management packages, just as an example. Pretty sure there was another something we should probably be changing. Push this button in there as well. Right. This all still works the same way, which is nice. This, however, is not. So this is trying to stream a wish list state now. Now, as I said earlier, like this is potentially going to return back the different states, and we need to understand what we actually want to return. So at the moment, this is expecting a wish list of products, which now has changed. If we just pass it through, this is what it would be. But what do we actually care about on this for the screen, right, is actually the wish list of items. We may want to, you could do this differently, but right now I think this is a good example here of saying, okay, if state is wish list state none, return empty widget, right? We could actually return back yeah, loading spinner, maybe, like to show that it's still loading, or I don't know, there's obviously in our use case, we make sure this is initialized before it starts up, but you know, you can kind of see where the state stuff comes in now. What this might work in terms of how you handle it in your apps. So okay, probably do this as if it's not active, because this widget requires it to be active. And then we can then treat state as an active state, and we get items back from it. That makes sense. So the compiler knows that it can only be at the state object can only be this type at this point. So that's why it gives us items from the active state. That's like an optimization the compiler does for us. All right, so now we've done that. Now we have all our wish list stuff over here, storage, repo page, everything else. We can should go to restart that. And let's see if we broke something. No, it still works. That's good, isn't it? untick from here, go back. Yep. Ooh. And we can untick from here, remove. Yeah, it's all working. So that kind of gives you an example there of what you could do in terms of, you know, how you might want to refactor something, right? Like, I don't know. Well, some questions here. So does that, hopefully that kind of expresses the that kind of explains your sort of state thing you were just talking about. Wishes button is a common widget which can be used on any product page, so it doesn't make sense to have it. Anyway, wish button is a common widget which can be used in any product page, so doesn't it make more sense to have it as a standalone widget? Oh, I see what you mean, because I moved it into the, again, this is what I'm trying to say. I mentioned this before. It doesn't matter where you put your files. This is all about organization, but yeah, maybe you can do that. There you go. And the reason why we have this top level widgets, the reason why I described it first, is to have the more common things that are used across the application in maybe a common area. But it could get too big, it could get too unwieldy, and in which case you go think about, oh well, do we want another folded level, right? Maybe maybe let's say cart, we've got checkout, right? The cart section of the app, again, this is just how you order it, right? But we've got this checkout screen. At the moment, I just put them into the same folder here, right? But what we could do is have a whole subfolder under the cart called checkout, and that has a folder called widgets for all the stuff that happens during checkout. It's just more about, don't just make one big folder of all your files in, right? Because you can't find anything. The whole idea of the folder is just to organize your files, right? So that you can find things that are relative to what you're talking, what you need. But yeah, I don't know. Hope that answers that question. Is anyone interested about this a bit more? Maybe you can look at some state stuff to do with the auth repo, perhaps, or is anything anyone wants to see particularly? Anything? Otherwise, what was it actually? Randall, you there? See if he's awake. I can't hear you, Randall, if you're talking.
Because I had the hardware mute. Okay, now we're back. What was the question to me?
I was going to say, we were talking about listenable and streams the other day. We could quickly, we could do that. Oh, Sub, if you got a question, feel free. Yeah, but just ask.
Yeah, questions first, of course.
Mm-hmm. Is he there? Sub, are you there? You said you have a question. It did drop out.
Don't know.
He's here. We can't hear you if you're talking. Or just type your question in the chat. One, two. Assume you type it in the chat. So I'll just keep talking to Randall for a second, but feel free to ask your question. There we are. I'll hear you now.
Different input output stuff. Yeah. So basically, there is another issue I wanted to know. Like, I remember seeing the sort of the blank bottom bar when loading it initially. And I'm just curious about the.
Yes. Actually, that was a bug that I actually brought with Randall the other day when we were talking about this. That was when we were doing the live streams. Yeah, you mean that this bottom bar is blank when we first start, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I noticed the same issue, and it kind of irked me, and I mean to fix it. So let me explain what's going on. It has to load the assets. So all these nav icons that we have in here, these SVGs, have to be loaded and passed before we can display them on the screen. And we don't wait for them to be loaded before we try to display them on the screen. That's what the issue is. So as soon as you use an SVG in an SVG picture widget, it loads the SVG then, unless it's got in its cache. So what we want to do is ensure that when we load the app, when we're loading up, starting up the app and we're loading it, we want to make sure that we initialize that stream before we display the main screen, right? So I would normally do something like this. Away, was this the main screen? Pre-cache images or something, right? So the idea of doing this as a static, right, is that we keep it again. It's all about organization, right? It's the pre-caching of images of the main screen, right? Now we could just put the lines in here, but then we're not very organized, right? So we move them over into there. It indicates what it's doing. And the reason why we check for mount is because it's after and await. So this widget that we're in right now might have left the widget tree by the time we get to this point. So we need to make sure that it's mounted still. Anyway, when you pre-cache, bear with me. Yeah, SVG picture. I think, if I remember rightly, let's go look at the. So this creates an SVG asset loader. Key. There is actually information for this. I'm just trying to remember what it was. Right, SVG. For the life of me, I can't remember what it was. It's escaped me. But anyway, let's go dig it out. I mean, this is what we do. This is what I would be doing. So let's go do it. So we can go to Flutter SVG. Precompile. So that's another option you can do. Won't go into that. So this is you can actually do this, by the way. Now is convert your SVGs into precompiled vec files, and these are like binary graphics, if you will. So they don't have to be parsed. Still have to be loaded, so there's still like a time to it, but it's a lot less than parsing complex SVGs. And if you've got complex SVGs, I would recommend it. If you've got simple SVGs like these, when I mean complex, I mean like lots of shades, colors, like complex pictures. If you're doing like simple shapes like these, like the simple data things, yeah, don't even bother. There's just not enough to warrant doing that. I swear there was an example of this, and it was actually I swear there was an example built into the README. Go look at the repo. Preloading is not real. What? Pre-cache image. Well, exactly. There you go. So that is actually the correct way, but apparently someone's having a complaint about that. Oh, so a quick look and see what this is doing. That's it. So I was on the right lines, right? So we create our loader based on the asset that we want, and then we can ignore that. I guess we could actually make that into like an extension or something, I guess. Oh my goodness me, what is all that? It's an exception rethrow. What's the point of that? Right. Yeah, so that's kind of what you need to do to preload an image. I thought that was built in somewhere. I swear that was built in somewhere. But yeah, let's say pre-cache SVG. You can't do static extension methods, can you? We could I'm kind of curious about how I could do this to make it a bit more functional, a bit nicer. If we go into our utilities, we can do svg.dart. I wonder if we could do an extension on SVG picture. It's got an SVG picture preload, pre-cache. You can't do statics, but honestly, I don't really care. I don't care for the result either. We just want to pre-cache, and we can get rid of this. And we should have a loader already. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Not extend on. It's just stupid. We just saw it convert, making that loader, bytes loader. There we go, bytes loader, I guess is what we want. So there we go. So that is how you can pre-cache one of these SVGs. I feel like it should be built in, but what we can now do is go back to here, SVG picture.asset, put our asset in here, and then do dot pre-cache, right? I'll make this async. Void. So what we can do with this is, what was the widgets in our bottom nav? I guess we could do bottom nav bar dot pre-cache and actually do in here. That might, we could pass it down, right? So let's see what we've got. Go to bottom nav bar, pre-cache images. Bottom nav bar button. So each one of these was nav bar items, that's the one. So we'll say nav bar values, map, nav bar icon asset. So that's the one we want to map. Drop that in there. Put this in here. So we're going to map each icon to a future. And then we can say await future dot all or something. Wait. Still wait. That's the advantage of doing future.wait is it starts up all these futures. We don't wait for one future to finish before we start the next one, before we start the next one. It's actually going to preload all of these SVGs at the same time, concurrently. That's the advantage of doing future.wait. See you, Randall. Thanks for coming. So here we've got pre-cache images, and now we should be able to call bottom nav bar pre-cache images context. Okay, so when you pre-cache images to the main screen, we want to pre-cache the bottom nav bar images, which will go through all the nav bar items and pre-cache those image assets. All right, so now we've done that, let's go back to where we were. Here on the main screen, we'll wait for the pre-cache of those images. That all looks good. So let's turn that off and show everyone the bug. So if I restart the app for a split second, look at the bottom bar here. See it's blank, and then you see the height that comes in as they load. Now, if we do it this way around with that in there, restart, straight in there. Didn't have to wait for them to load. Do it again, restart, immediately in there. That's because we wait for all these images to load, all these vector images to load before we display them on the screen, right? That's what we're doing here. And we could do the same thing, right? Like when it comes to like this pre-cache images, we could take this same concept probably, and it might not be bad to do this with the header bar as well, right? So where was it? I don't remember what it was called now. Hang on. It's on the home page, isn't it? Yeah. Let's go find that home page. So the logo, these assets here, We could preload some of the assets. I know there's lots of things we do. Right now, I feel like it's probably the category items and then these three. So again, if we pop a little function here, pre-cache images, I'm going to take each one of these and we can build a simple list with them all in. Icon search. Icon filter. And then we want category nav list. Again, let's add a similar pre-cache to that. And we'll say category view values. Each one, icon asset, same thing as before. Then there, this in here. There is actually slightly, I'm kind of mixing my mechanisms here actually. So it may be a little bit unclear. Let me tidy this up a little bit. So the mapping works. I kind of, you can use map all the time, but sometimes if you're going to do more implicit here with the square brackets, you can actually just do for, right? So for here, this could be item in category item dot values. And then for each one, we're doing this. Right? So that is also a nicer, maybe a nicer way of reading. It's exactly the same thing, right? So now we've got pre-cache items on our nav list. Let's go back up to home page. In here, we want to do ... pre-cache images from context. So we get each one. That's interesting because, yeah, okay, because this is returning one future, not a list. That's fine. Okay, so it's going to pre-cache those. And then homepage.precache images. When the main screen loads, you're probably going to be displaying the home screen as the first screen, right? So I think it's good to put home screen, home page, sorry, dot precache images here. Yeah, what I probably want to do, we don't even use context actually, do we? We'll get rid of context then. Sorry, I thought we were going to use context. The old mechanism, you'd use context. So since we're not using it, let's get rid of that. Even better. Right, so now when the main screen starts up, it pre-caches these three images at the top, all the category images there, and then pre-caches the bottom nav. So see what happens. Oops, we have a mistake. And wait, what? Oh, we can start again. There you go. A quick look here, homepage. Seemed to be kind of like a little delay there. It's interesting that it's white beforehand for some frames. That might be because of the way we're actually loading home screen in. what do we call the constructor? Selected. Ah, there's our compro. What do we reckon is that? Is it that? Could it be that? It is that. Here's our problem. Okay, let's fix that. So that's my mistake. That's another bug. So we wait for the very first feature for the check connectivity, and we show an empty widget until we get the connection back from the platform. Well, we don't have to wait for that. We can just show the widget inside without the possibility of a banner around it. There's actually a slightly better way of doing this. So I'm actually, yeah, we'll switch it out. So let's do that. It's briefly, it's only a quick change. Basically, just consolidate this into one stream builder instead of having a feature builder. So instead of listening to these two things independently, we'll just listen to the same time. Really quick way to do this is to have a stream of connectivity result and say, let's call this, what do I want to call this? Activity stream, I guess. And this is a sync, an async star function. That means it's implicitly a stream. And then all we need to do is yield the initial future value. So just yield that and I'll wait for it. And then after that, we can do a yield star, which means output everything from this other stream. And that'll be from the connectivity changed. So that just kind of like runs the two lines together. And then we just need to store that in we can put connectivity now in here, since we don't need it anywhere else. And instead of having these, we can have a late final future. Actually, don't need to have, let's be final future, let's call it connectivity, I guess. Connectivity stream. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Right. So the idea being here is when we first create a stream build, it first calls underscore connectivity, which is late final. It then calls this function, gets the result, caches it in the final, and now start the process off separately of going to the plugin, getting the initial value, then getting a stream of values that follow. And then we'll get our snapshot. But immediately our snapshot does not necessarily have data. So, and done is once the stream finishes. So we just want to say active. Active means we've actually received a value. If we're not active, it actually explains it in here, right? We're waiting for our initial value to come through. So in that case, we want to show the child widget. Other than that, we can show it with this. So that slightly simplifies it. I don't know if you agree. Yeah, go for it, Sam. Yeah.
So, curious, I remember we were asked to.
Sorry, you're really fake. Sorry, say again.
Yeah. No. So I want to know, like, we had to use the check connectivity before the first time, and then consecutively we were using the on connectivity things, right? That's what we do. That's why we needed the feature.
Yeah, I mean, we're still doing the same thing here. We were waiting, we were showing an empty widget until we got this value back, right? Now we're going to be showing the child widget before we get that value back.
Okay.
So it's the same as what I did. So we could have just replaced inside of this future builder that was already in here. We can just have replaced that bit of code and have it return back the widget.child instead of empty widget. And that would have done the job that we wanted to originally, which was not show the white screen. However, while I'm in here, I figure let's optimize this because again, it was kind of rushed beforehand. So now a restart, we should see, boom, straight into the home page without waiting. Nice.
All right. Yeah, right. So we are doing like one-time stream of the check connectivity, and then we are doing the
stream
stream of stuff.
Yeah. So this is the one time, because the stream does not emit the first value. It's only on changed. It's only if it changes its state. So as I said, it's not a behavior subject like we were just dealing with, where when you first connect to the stream, it emits a value. It only emits values on the stream once values are changed. So that's why we need to get the initial value from this. All right. So talking about performance here. I don't know, it's pretty good. What is going on with it? Let's go see what's going on with the home page. It's definitely better than what it was. I guess the top selling is another similar aspect, right? This top selling list here is, yeah, we don't have an initial value, right? So if we already had the top selling, which we do essentially, we could actually say products repo like current top selling. And this, yeah, sliver fill remaining. Let's just you don't even see it spin. There is a spinner there. So immediately we should get that up if we do it this way. So if we change this to say not connection state finished, but though we have data. So if we don't have data, then we're still loading. If we get an error, this is not great because we're still going to show a spinner, but we don't have an error state in here anyway. So I think it's fine for the minute. So we got fetch top setting. We might have some current ones. At the moment, we just return back the list of products. So we'll just do the same thing here. So list of product, item, current top selling. Going to change this actually. Unmodifiable list view. Unmodifiable list view is actually what the return variable list unmodifiable is, except list unmodifiable does not keep the type. It makes it dynamic. So you're normally better off doing unmodifiable list view. But anyway, so now we've got current top selling as an immediate return result. Oops. Restart. It should be pretty much instantaneous, hopefully. Boom. And we can even go one step further, right? We can ask it on the splash screen to preload all the promo banners, preload the product images, right? So you go into the app from the splash screen, and boom, you know, you've got all your products there. You got a really nice experience. You haven't had to wait for them to be downloaded or loaded or whatever. You want to be careful, obviously, with that, because if it's coming from the network, you don't want to preload those. You only want to preload the ones you have from cache, right? These are all coming from assets, which is fine for the minute. But if these were coming from network, as we said before, we made a, I think it was a product image widget. So this would maybe look at the product item and then compare the item in its little, we could have like a cache or a top level, some sort of top level image cache. The framework has one of these anyway, but I mean like of products and images. And then if we've already got them in memory, we can just return them back. So I know there's ways of dealing with this. Another neat trick of what you can do with images is to extend and make your own image provider. So image provider is how images are loaded, and then you could extend this however you want and base it off of, I don't know, the network image provider, which is the one that's built in if you wanted to. There's a ton of ways of doing this. Cache network image package actually provides one for you. So actually, why not? Let's cached. Let's go find the latest version. It's a cache network image. 323. What just happened? Right. There we go. Cache network image is quite nice. It will, well, we don't actually have any URLs for these images, so I just realized this is kind of pointless. But cache network images has a widget called cache network image, but also has a provider, and you can use that provider in inc.image, right? So if we had something coming from network, we could put this in here, and then this would expect the image URL, not a asset URL. That makes sense. There's a bunch of things you can do. But yeah, cache network image automatically keeps a disk cache of your images that download from network. And you can also preload with it as well into the memory cache. If you don't know, there's a global image cache in Flutter. There's image cache, and there we go. Really, it's not liking me right now. There's a global extend image cache clear, blah blah blah. You can apparently do your own. The more you know. Flutter widgets binding, create image cache, my image cache. Never bothered doing that, but that actually sounds like not a bad idea. But there you go. So there's some of the defaults. Implements least recently used cache, 1,000 images, up to 100 megabytes in size, which is adequate for like many apps. But I was going to say, yeah, you can do clear and evict. Yeah, so here's the clear. That will clear the entire memory cache. And then you've got evict, and this object key you get from the image provider. I think actually image provider has an evict function on it. I'm trying to, I feel like there's a singleton somewhere, but maybe it's, hang on. Maybe they changed it. This is taking me back a bit here. Hang on. Flutter widget binding. Flutter widget binding. Widget. Literally just saw it in there, and now I can't remember what it's called. And it means time we wrap up in a minute. Let's just try. What is it? Widgets Flutter binding. Oh my gosh! Right. Yeah, but it would be the singleton name. Binding dot instance dot cache. I'm kind of curious. I know there's a way of getting. Oh, it's going to be one of the base types. It's going to be the rendering binding, I think. Maybe services binding, rendering binding. Let's find out. The bindings are joined together, by the way, in this top level Flutter widgets binding. That's what Run App does, and that's how it starts, brings all the service layer of Flutter together. Well, it's not that one. Is it the service binding? Oh, this is going to annoy me. Hang on. Let's come at this a different way. Sorry, the bindings are all joined together as mix-ins, and it can get quite big. But what we can do to shortcut down which actually calls the create image. I'm looking for where the image create image stuff was being called from, which we looked at when we're in here is let's just copy their example and create image cache. There we go. Painting binding. Of course, it's the painting binding. Who? There's the image cache, and you can get the instance of it. And there's the image cache. So, okay, for those that want to know, there's shader warm up as well. Right. So it's painting binding .instance .image cache .clear. If you ever wanted to clear all your images out of your image cache, I'm sure there's probably a nicer way, but there's image cache. There's also evict and the key you get from your provider. So for example, this one down here, asset image. If we had this asset and we wanted to clear it from the cache, it's get key, is it key? Hang on. Obtain key, that's it. And you have to, there's an image, I won't go into it, but there's an image configuration you can also get. There is actually, I believe, when you just have your image provider, I think it has an evict. There you go, and you pass it you can optionally pass it a cache, so you don't have to configure it. So this is exactly the same thing as the line above, as it were. If this was, and let's put this back in there. So this one's exactly the same. If you go to it, it says evict, and there is obtain key for configuration. It uses the empty configuration by default. There you go. So if you pop that in there, those two lines are exactly what this does here, right? Image asset, whatever not asset image, would be network image. It can be any of the image providers. You can just do evict, and that will remove this image that this provider fetches from the cache. As you can see here, network image URL, evict it from the cache. That might be that, let's say you download an image and then you update it on the server and you want to re-download a new one. Well, it will just go get it from the cache. So you need to evict it first so that you can go download them. So then the framework will download the new one. A bit of a side tangent there, but hopefully that's something new there. I don't know. Off in the weeds. Right, I'm going to push that code. And we did, let's see, wish list. Still with, there's 2 commits. So we're looking at the right things. Sure. That's pre-caching, wish list repo, wish list page. So all pre-cached images. That was wish list. Wish list. That's the other. Okay, so we've got a few different things we can commit here. Let's take a quick stab through this, make sure we're not missing something. All right, so this one here is all. That's all wish lists. So I'm going to say improved wish list repo to use state rather than direct image list. And then we've got this is navigation bug. Let's fix that. Connectivity. So this is fix navigation after expired open. And then we've got our connectivity monitor. Update first home screen or first screen performance by connection monitor. And then we've got pre-caching images, which I believe is all of this. Yeah. Cache, icons, pre-cache icons, assets, so bottom nav, and first screen. This is not GitHub Desktop. This is Fork. It's called, and you can go get it from fork.dev. It works on Mac and Windows. It's a fast and friendly Git client. There you go. That's the tagline. This is the one that I use. This is, you get to see your history, you can see your local changes, all your tags, all your things, all the stuff. And you still get your command line Git that you can do. You get all your stuff. Yeah, everything you want. Line dark modes, merge conflict resolution in line, interactive rebasing, image diffing. Yeah, you got a ton of stuff. Looking at commit histories, what's changed, git blame. It's all in there. It's all really cool. Right. Well, I think that's where we park it for today. I think that was a good session. Thanks very much for sticking around, everyone. Hope you learned something, and I think we'll see what we can do again. But this will be the last. This is the last session of this official Devcamp and meeting of everyone here. Hope you had a great time, and we'll probably end up doing some more of the WoW shopping stuff and trying to finish this off as an example app for the community, and probably do that through Hump Day Q&A or somewhere else. See how it goes. Nice to see you all, and see you again soon.
See you guys. See you, Simon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.